G'day guys, how we doing? Welcome to the weekly roundup. It is Friday, July 26th, 2024, and I say it every week, what a week it has been in boxing. Here in Australia, a couple of things happening. First of all, we had the purse bids for Tim Tszyu and Ericsson Lubin has been cancelled. Now, purse bids I think were ordered by the 30th of July. With the no limit, of course, for Tim Tszyu. Not quite sure who it was for Ericsson Lubin, but whatever it is. So the purse bids were initiated by the IBF, and Ericsson Lubin, even though he's been very active on social media in his training camp, has been deemed medically unfit. Apparently, it's due to a hand injury. Ericsson Lubin has said that the fight was not off. It has just been postponed. He wants to fight at the end of the year. So we'll see what happens there. But Tim Tszyu at the moment without a dance partner for September the 22nd. There has been talk that Jesus Ramos might be the other fighter in contention. But surprisingly, an old face from the past has raised his hand. I'm talking about Michael Zerafa. Now, Michael Zerafa has been very vocal in the last couple of days. One for probably not surprising circumstances. Another one is very surprising, and I'll get to that. First of all, it's not surprising to see Michael Zerafa call out Tim Tszyu, also call out Nikita Tszyu. But the one that is very surprising is the fact that he's enlisted trainer Glenn Rushton into his camp. Now, we don't know, Glenn Rushton was the trainer of Jeff Horn. Of course, Michael Zerafa had two unforgettable fights against Jeff Horn. And Michael Zerafa said some pretty horrific things about Glenn Rushton in the lead up to both of those fights. The two got into it a lot. And Michael Zerafa not very complimentary towards Glenn Rushton during those lead up to those fights. But now he's enlisted Glenn Rushton to be part of his camp. He seems to change trainers nearly every fight, does Michael Zerafa. His last fight he had Nino Donaire. I'm not quite sure whether Nonito will be involved again, but Glenn Rushton, who has said that he won't be the trainer. He will just be part of Michael's camp. I'm not sure how that goes when it comes to trainers. There's a lot of trainers that become almost alpha males and they want to take control. So we'll see what happens there. But all of a sudden, they are very, very chummy to the point where Glenn Rushton actually put on Michael Zerafa's tracksuit top with the big MZ on it, all that sort of stuff. They did everything they needed to do at the press conference. So look, we'll just wait and see what Glenn Rushton brings to the table. My thing is that Glenn Rushton did great things with Jeff Horn, but when Jeff was absolutely taken apart by Tim Tszyu, didn't really have a lot to offer in giving Jeff Horn a chance. Although having said that, everyone apart from Sebastian Fundora have been in the same boat. So it's an interesting one. It was again another interesting press conference. Michael Zerafa having plenty to say about Nikita Tszyu and especially Tim Tszyu. He did actually a sit-down interview with Ben Damon on Main Event. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. And look, he raised some I'm not sure they'll be concerns, but some points about about Tim Tszyu along the lines of hasn't fought anybody. Will everyone stop with the people pulling out because they're scared aspect? I, for one, actually agree with the fighters. They're not scared of Tim Tszyu. The guys at that level aren't scared of other fighters at that level. Unless you're a Mike Tyson or someone like that, or a Hagler who had that mystique about them. In this case, I think it just comes down to business decisions. This is a very interesting one, though, I will say as well, because Ericsson Lubin, as I said before, was all systems go, pulled out medically unfit. There's rumours that the Spence Fundora fight might be off or delayed. I'll get to that later on in this episode. And it sometimes all augurs towards maybe some strategically made decisions that are being made so that maybe it's Tim versus Fundora, and who knows, maybe it's Spence and Crawford crossing paths again. You just don't know. But Michael's argument with that, or his opinion, was that Tim Tszyu hasn't fought anybody. I think he said we've got to get away from this whole Tim Tszyu is unbeatable stuff. So really fascinating stuff. Look, for me, I did say it on the my new segment called Walking Boxing. Well, of course, I'm sure you all watch Talking Boxing. This is Walking Boxing. This is me of a morning walking my dog getting a few things off my mind. But I just think for me personally that Michael Zarafa hasn't really got as much relevance as maybe he thinks he does. And I don't think Tim Tszyu would have a second's thought of maybe fighting Michael Zarafa at any stage unless it 100% suited them. But the Nikita fight does make sense. So we'll see again what happens on August 28th. Now, actually, on the August 28th card. Now, of course, we have Nikita Tszyu and Koa Mizudia. We have Michael Zarafa and Tommy Brown. Make of that what you will. I will give Michael Zarafa a little bit of credit here, though. He did say, look, I didn't choose this guy. No Limit did. I'm just turning up to fight. So it's not like Michael Zarafa has gone out of his way to fight Tommy Brown, who is well past his peak, 41 years of age. Got knocked out by Michael Zarafa, was it 8, 9, 10 years ago, whatever it was. But he did say this is not my decision. But a fight that's actually been added to the card is Connor Wallace and Jerome Pampalone. Now, you remember, recently Connor Wallace with a 6th-round knockout of Jack Gipp back in March, but Jerome Pampalone had an absolute war with Malik Zinad back in April of 24. Malik Zinad actually went on to fight Dimitri Bivol after that, so who knows what might have happened if the Kiwi Pampalone had got past that fight. But that fight has been added to the card. It's an official IBF eliminator. And with Tszyu versus Mizudia, Zarafa, Brown, Wallace, and especially Pampalone and Wallace, it's starting to shape up as a very good card. Connor Wallace, by the way, is 13-1. Pampalone is 18-1. So I, for one, am really looking forward to that fight, and I think it's a welcome addition to that card. Last night in Queensland, Justice Huni improved to 10-0 with a second-round knockout of Troy Pilcher, who dropped to 9-1-1. A very impressive performance by Justice Huni. I think Troy Pilcher was always going to be up against it. Hadn't really fought anyone remotely resembling an opponent with the talent of Justice Huni, and Justice did everything he needed to do. Spent the first round just getting a look at Troy Pilcher. Towards the end of the round, he started landing some left hooks to the body, and in round 2 really opened up, and Pilcher's corner threw in the towel, I think with about 30 seconds to go in the round. So again, Justice Huni, very impressive. Can't wait to see what he brings to the table in future fights. On the undercard, Lucas Miller gave up his Australian light heavyweight title, losing to Clay Waterman over 10 rounds. He drops to 12-7-2. Clay Waterman improves to 13-1. And a young fighter on the undercard that looked pretty good was Xavier Fletcher. He improved to 3-0 with a 3rd-round knockout of Sutama Manuel, who dropped to 2-5. And one last thing on the Aussie boxing scene, of course, the Olympics start this weekend. I think the opening ceremony is either tonight or tomorrow night. The boxing gets underway the next day, and all the Aussies are spread out over the next 3 or 4 days. So make sure you get on. I think it's the 9 Gem, I think it is. One of those 9 apps anyway. They'll have a boxing channel, so just dedicated to boxing. So get on there and check it out. Can't wait to see how the 12 Aussies go in the Olympic Games. So it should be great. It's only 3 years ago instead of 4, of course. Harry Garside, probably our best bet. He won a bronze medal at the last Olympics in Tokyo, and I think he would be our best bet to medal, even though I think we will be in the hunt for 3, if not 4 medals, possibly even a gold medal in there as well. So an exciting couple of weeks in Australian boxing and sport in general, of course, for the world with the Olympic Games in Paris. On to the world scene. Last week in Japan, Junto Nakatani with a devastating first-round knockout. I think it was still a little bit sus with how it landed, but it was a first-round knockout over Vincent Astrolabio. Nakatani improves to 28-0. Astrolabio drops to 19-5. That was in defense of the WBC 115-pound title. Also on the undercard, Anthony Olasquaga, I think that's how you pronounce it, improved to 7-1 with a 3rd-round knockout of Riker Kano to win the WBO 112-pound title. Kano dropped to 22-5-2. Big fight that's been announced this week. Well, I say big fight. It's arguably a big fight. Depends on who you listen to on social media and all the platforms. Canelo Alvarez, 61-2-2, will defend his world 168 or super middleweight belts against Edgar Berlanga, who's 22-0 at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas on September the 14th. I, for one, am very happy that the fight's on, because if you watch this channel, you know I've booked flights to Las Vegas that weekend in the hope of a fight happening, and here we are. So I, for one, think it's a great fight. I'm very much in the minority, though. Most fans and experts and podcasters, YouTubers, you name it, very critical of the fight. I, for one, think it'll be an entertaining fight. One thing to make note of in this fight is that it won't be for the undisputed title. The IBF have stripped Canelo Alvarez of the belt. I think we're all under the understanding that William Skull, the number one IBF challenger, look him up if you don't know him. I certainly didn't. There was supposed to be, well, allegedly been an agreement made between Canelo and Skull. There's some step-aside money. By the looks of that, maybe Skull has put his foot down and asked for the shot. No matter what it is, the IBF belt has been declared vacant, so it'll be for the WBA, WBC, and WBO belts. Canelo coming off a 12-round decision over Jaime Munguia back in May of this year. Belunga with a 6th-round knockout of Padraig McCrory back in February of this year as well. So that's on DAZN pay-per-view. Interesting on the undercard, Erislandy Lara, 30 wins, 3 losses, and 3 draws, will take on former 2-division champion Danny Garcia for the WBA 160-pound title. Garcia is 37-3. Lara coming off, of course, that second-round obliteration of Michael Zarafa back in March of this year. Garcia hasn't fought for a couple of years. He won a 12-round decision over Jose Benavides Jr. back in July of 2022. So, interesting card. I'd like to see maybe a fight or two added to that to maybe create a little bit of buzz, because I think as it is at the moment, I'm not sure this card going up against the UFC down the road at the Las Vegas Sphere is strong enough. But either way, I will be there. Any event featuring Canelo is always a big event. And again, I'll say it, I think it's actually an entertaining fight. And hopefully just the last fight of Canelo before he takes on a David Benavides or maybe even a Terence Crawford, depending on how he goes next week. Another big fight, as I mentioned earlier, Sebastian Fundora, Errol Spence. I was looking like it might be in October, looking more like November or maybe even put back until January. I'm not quite sure. There's been various things being said about why the fight has been postponed. Well, actually, I'm not sure it's actually been postponed because we didn't have an ironclad date to begin with. But as I said, it was spoken about. It would be October, but now it looks like, again, November or January. So some big things happening in the 154-pound division towards the end of the year. An interesting development this week, Turki Al Sheikh, of course, from Saudi Arabia, the Riyadi Season Corporation, has inked a partnership with Top Rank and Golden Boy. Now, this is, as I said, a really big twist on things, because both of those promotional companies have shown a little bit of pushback towards the Saudis or what they're doing in boxing, especially Golden Boy. Now, Golden Boy promoter or CEO Oscar De La Hoya has actually been on social media and said, look, it's not partnership as such. It's a sponsorship agreement with Turki Al Sheikh, and he's not going to be selling out to the Saudis. And I would say Top Rank is in the same boat as that. So looks like the Riyadi Season Corporation will sponsor 12 Top Rank events towards the end of 2024 and all of 2025. So no word yet what they plan to do with Golden Boy, but I'm assuming it would be very, very similar. Now, the interesting thing with this one is I personally don't think that the Saudis have got absolutely anything to gain by sponsoring events by Top Rank and Golden Boy, but maybe there's just the olive branch being put out to both of those companies. Maybe it's just a little subtle foot in the door to maybe bigger things down the track. So very, very interesting times with the Riyadi Season Corporation, Top Rank, and a Golden Boy. Some news to hand as well as that Vasily Lomachenko has withdrawn from negotiations with Gervonta Tank Davis. His excuse for it was simply he's not in the mood. And when you're at the stature of Lomachenko, well, you can do whatever you want. So Gervonta Davis, 30-0, has now turned his attention towards fellow lightweight champion, WBC champion Shakur Stevenson, 22-0. And they're looking to do that possibly in November. Now, I've got a feeling that Lomachenko will be looking at Davis and Stevenson fighting, as I said just then, in November. And maybe Zepeda fighting Burachuk for the IBF belt. And Lomachenko, who has the WBA belt, is it? WBO belt. Sorry, I apologize. Davis has WBA. Stevenson has the WBC. Lomachenko has the IBF, and Burachuk has the WBO. So he would prefer Zepeda to fight Burachuk for the WBO belt. Sorry, I'll get that right. And Davis and Shakur to fight for the WBA and WBC. And then Lomachenko would come in and hopefully clean up that division in 2025 and maybe call it a day after that. Just a couple of quick ones. The WBC have ordered a rematch between O'Shaquie Foster and Robson Conceição. You remember the first fight back in July. Conceição won a very, very dubious decision. The scorecards were 116, 112, 115, 113 for Conceição and 116, 112 for Foster. Foster 22-3, Conceição 19-2-1. So that rematch will take place towards the end of this year. And one thing to finish up, Joe Joyce 16-2 will make his comeback this weekend against journeyman Derek Chisora 34-13 in London at the O2 Arena, with his eyes set on fights against maybe Joseph Parker. I'm not sure he'll fight Zhilei Zhang again, although it was discussed or put out there by Joyce, but I think it'd be Joseph Parker. Or maybe Joshua, Usyk, Fury, who knows. But his last crack at it, last roll of the dice, so all the best to him. I think he makes easy work of Chisora, and we'll see what he's got left in the tank. So that's it for this week, guys. That is July 26, 2024. Look out for you next week, and have a great weekend watching the fights.